All right, yo, what's up? Liberty Weekly live stream here on a Saturday, a beautiful Saturday morning. You can see the light coming out from the window. So this is a super chill Saturday live stream, just doing because nothing else going on this weekend. Also, I wanted to promote the Libertarian Union's State of the Libertarian Union talk show being filmed later this afternoon. That should be released on Sunday. And I have my first guest. It's Kyle Ancelone from Foreign Policy Focus. How's it going, man?
Ed, how's it going?
Can you hear me?
I'm doing well. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. It's going through my microphone, right? And not the webcam again.
Right. I don't think I hear an echo or anything. So okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's up, man?
Not too much going on. Got some podcasts to record today. We got the State of the Union for the Libertarian Union show. And then I'm recording a couple shows with Scott Horton for episode 200 of Foreign Policy Focus. That'll be out Wednesday. And then Mance Raider, the king of memes on Twitter, will be episode 201 on Friday. And so I'm interviewing those guys later today as well.
Badass. Yeah, I got to get Mance Raider on for his new book. Just been so busy lately.
Right, and I think he was saying he has plans to write like a series, like 3 or 4 books in total. So
that's so cool. Yeah, life goals for me.
Right.
Yeah. Well, since you're on, maybe we should just talk about some foreign policy stuff going on.
Oh boy,
super close attention, but there's a lot, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a whole lot. I mean, if you want to go with the Middle East, of course, you know, there's always wars going on there. And then right now you got the stuff going on with North Korea. Trump's policy doesn't seem to make pretty much any sense there, but that's where we are.
Yeah, that was super annoying to see. But Daniel McAdams on the Liberty Report with Ron Paul was saying that, this isn't all bad. I think he's trying to see the glass half full. I can't remember his reasoning behind it, but did you see that episode?
I have not. I actually Scott Horn put out like 11 episodes on Thursday, so I've been working my way through those, especially since I'm gonna have Scott on later. But I mean, my take on it is that it seems to be a bad thing, but at the same time, Trump's idea, at least, is that this idea of a maximum pressure campaign is going to work. And basically, Trump is just going to draw the hardest line possible until Korea meets whatever he wants them to meet. And so, I don't know. I mean, I did see today, I have the story open in my browser. I haven't got a chance to read it, that Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in, who is, of course, the South Korean president, met, I believe, like within the past few hours. And so that really suggests that even if Trump isn't figuring this out, the Koreans are.
Yeah, and that's so good. I mean, well, I think, okay, I just remember Daniel McAdams' point was just that now the U.S. isn't directly involved, so they can't screw things up as much.
Right. And I mean, that could be one of the good things here is that, the Americans at least have to have the pretense that we're defending someone. I don't think that many people are actually scared that Kim Jong-un is going to hit North Korea, or excuse me, Los Angeles with a nuclear weapon. I think, the pretense for the American involvement really has to be to protect our allies and our interests in the area, and that would be South Korea. And so if the South Koreans say, hey, guys, look, everything's cool over here, we're good now, the North, yeah, I mean, they're loud sometimes and they complain a lot, but they're totally chill and you don't have to worry about it. It's going to be very hard to sell the war for the Americans, especially if, that's the case. And then we could start bringing up, hey, we're spending billions of dollars. We have 30,000 troops over there for absolutely no reason. We have aircraft carriers constantly in the area. And so not only could this be something that helps to bring peace to North Korea, but it could be used as an excuse to cut the U.S. defense budget, get some of the U.S. Pacific Fleet out of that territory. That'll certainly help with relations with China, and so there could be some real positive steps here, even if the Americans are involved. But you would hope that Trump would be involved and sign off on whatever kind of deal, just because as much as having a country say, hey, look, we're denuclearizing, we're agreeing to peace is a great thing. We saw with Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein that sometimes that isn't enough for the Americans. Although I think, the American people in the world take the South Koreans seriously enough that I think it would be hard to sell a war against North Korea if the South Koreans are saying we don't want it.
Yeah. And yeah, I was really surprised by, the asinine stupidity of having these peace talks happening. And then, we're not going to call off all of our simulated invasions of the country that we're in peace talks with.
Well, right. And this is something that I discussed on my show. And it would be interesting to know, to what extent that like Donald Trump knew about that these war games were going to take off. They just signed like something, in January that said, yeah, conduct the scheduled war games in North Korea as of, May, whatever, as planned as last year. Or if, it was actually discussed between Trump and John Bolton and James Mattis. What do we want to do? We have, the talks with Korea going positively. Do we want to conduct the war games? What do we want to have involved? War advisors telling Trump, hey, Kim Jong-un has really protested against the B-52s and the F-22s in the past. The reason why is that these planes could carry nuclear weapons or would carry the bombs that would be involved in a surgical strike against Kim Jong-un and the ruling party. And this is the reason why they're very afraid of us conducting these drills, and why in the past they've been so loud and so threatening while we were carrying these out. And maybe that was presented to Trump. I don't want to say it wasn't, but part of me thinks is that it may have just been like kind of a business as usual situation at the Pentagon, where the people who are conducting the war games either don't care or really aren't like maybe super in tune with, the positive talks going on with North Korea. And, like at the bureaucracy, if it's your job to, make this approval, then, you put your stamp on that paper. And, maybe it's just the kind of inherent motion of the Pentagon bureaucracy that had this take place. Because, after this was brought to the attention of the South Koreans and then Donald Trump, he did say that the B-52s, and I believe the F-52s as well, did not take place in the Maximum Thunder war games. And, and so that actually seemed to be a positive sign. Everybody was like, oh, hey, look here, the North Koreans were allowed to have a grievance, make that grievance public. The South Koreans took it to the Americans, and the Americans knocked it off. But, then Donald Trump canceled the war games a couple days later. Or not the war games, the summit on June 12th in Singapore with Kim Jong-un.
Yeah. Yeah. So, or I mean, what do you foresee then happening? I mean, so the summit is canceled. We get this letter, was it 3 or 4 days ago, from Donald Trump? He made another big threat about about the U.S. nuclear arsenal, and I pray to God that we never have to use it. And so, yeah.
Well, so I guess I don't know how many days or hours are going to air between now and the time we're having this conversation, when the podcast actually airs or when people are hearing it, because everything might change. The letter that Donald Trump sent Kim Jong-un was dated the 24th of May, so 2 days ago. And it notified him. And I just looking at the like wording of the letter, I guess at least like, they used like his actual title and stuff, and there wasn't like a super loud passive aggressive stuff there. They didn't like, send it to the dictator Kim Jong-un. But it was very childish, saying like, you're using really mean language about John Bolton and we don't like that, blah, blah. But then I'm looking at a story right now from, let's see, NBC News that says Donald Trump suggested his June 12th summit with Kim Jong-un may still be a go-ahead. And this is as Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in are meeting in the DMZ. And so, while I could say like, try to make a prediction, the fact is that we don't know what Donald Trump is doing or thinking or why. As I was kind of getting into before, he has this idea of a maximum pressure campaign working, thinking that he could basically just bully countries into taking the position that he wants. And so it may be the issue here that Donald Trump just, thought maybe that he was going to get a better deal. and tried, this like what he saw as a negotiating task, had to walk out of the talks. And then, maybe it was Moon Jae-in going to the DMZ, kind of undermining that and saying that, hey, if peace is going to happen here, I still want to have enough of a role in it to get my peace prize. So, maybe this is what's forcing Trump to say, maybe we'll have the talks now. And I mean, we saw this with, his China trade policy and a few others. He actually kind of stuck to his guns with Iran. But it's not unlike Donald Trump to propose something and then later on say, hey, I'm not going to do it. I mean, look, towards the end of his campaign, nearly every rally there chanting, lock her up, lock her up. And then the second Trump got elected, I don't even think he was actually in office yet. Just, the results were in and he won. He was like, that was campaign talk.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. So, well, I know that you and I were talking earlier this morning about that James Bovard article. Jim Bovard, did you get a chance to look that over?
I didn't get a chance to read. Yeah, I was doing some house maintenance this morning, resealing the tub. But I have that in the queue, and I've been listening to Scott Horton talk all morning. Recently listening to his interview about the results of the recent Iraqi election. And so I'm hoping to actually ask him some questions on my podcast about that. Both me and you, I guess, for the Iraqi surge years, that would have been like 2006 into 2007. I mean, I was in high school, so I really don't remember like who a lot of these, Shia players are who are now in the midst to become either the new prime minister or be the kingmaker for the new prime minister. And, so that's hopefully something that is going to be on episode 200 of Foreign Policy Focus.
So cool, man. Yeah, I'm glad that you're talking to Scott Horton. That'll be another good one. Is this your second or third time talking to him?
Second time he'll have been on the show. Episode 100 was the first one, and in that one we went over his book Fool's Errand. Yeah, and especially like the stuff again. And when I interview Scott, I love to talk about the stuff that was going on like before I was like really paying attention to every single foreign policy issue, because back then you kind of just got the mainstream media news. I wasn't old enough to, get online and find consortium news or whatever website, antiwar.com, that was telling the truth back then.
Yeah. And I don't remember anything. I mean, yeah, I was in middle school in 2006. And let's see, I started high school in like 2007, I think. But I mean, there's still people dying in Iraq. Like this isn't surprising, at least, but Jason Ditz has that great column on antiwar.com, and there was like a bombing a couple days ago that killed 40 people in Iraq. I mean, it just keeps going on and on and on and on.
Right. Well, I think at this point, a lot of I'm not sure about that specific attack, but yeah, I mean, there's still ISIS guys or people with that kind of ideology in Iraq, and it seems that they're trying to target the Shia in Baghdad the most with those suicide attacks. At any time, really, in the later portion of the war on ISIS, that the ISIS guys lost a big city, they would kind of take it out on the Shia in Baghdad. And so, I saw that one, that they targeted some empty offices of Mohammed al-Sadr, who's actually the guy whose bloc won the most seats in the recent election. And so they bombed a couple of his empty offices. But who knows? I mean, that could even, the offices were empty, so maybe it was just theatrics on his part to try to, gain some support or whatever, some sympathy. But very interesting that so many people are still dying there. And remember, this is 2003, so 15 years or so after the invasion of Iraq. It's even like, I don't know if you saw this, but John McCain apparently has admitted that the Iraq war was a bad deal and that he bears responsibility for getting the United States into it. Now, he should have had the word lying the United States into the war, but at least he's taking responsibility and saying that was a bad thing.
Yeah, I did see that. It was very interesting. And what about all the other stuff? Is he gonna, I'm not quite as familiar with John McCain and the stuff that he has advocated along the way, but what about all the other stuff? I'm sure there's more stuff, more death and destruction that he's advocated. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I know up until the last time he was in the Senate, he's been very hawkish on Iran. When they were voting on Montenegro joining NATO, and Rand Paul was standing up against it, saying, this country has like an army of 2,100 troops. What assistance do they provide? NATO and getting involved in there. And John McCain called him a stooge of Putin, I believe, on the Senate floor, or implied it on the Senate floor, then later went on the mainstream media and said it. So he's a complete neocon hawk, except on apparently, he has now walked back the Iraq war thing, which a lot of neocons have, but he's also been pretty consistently good on torture. And that's, of course, because he's been tortured himself. And so, it's amazing that like he's able to isolate that and say like, okay, I have enough experience there to know that's a bad thing. But he can't imagine that, let's say, his daughter was in a car that got hit by a drone, and understand why, drone strikes are a bad thing and how we accidentally bomb people too. Maybe had that happened to him. I saw a cat in the background there. Maybe had that happened to him, he would understand the problems with drone strikes, but obviously he hasn't. And maybe John McCain's just not that smart to think abstractly, and that's why he made a fantastic senator for a couple decades. As far as it goes, as pushing the empire.
Yeah, well, maybe to his credit, if I recall correctly from that Basevich book, the America's War for the Greater Middle East, I think he was against either Bosnia or Kosovo. So I guess to his credit.
Right, and there may be a complicating factor there that was a democratic war. I mean, I still like he was on board with the Obama wars, but that was earlier in his career. So maybe back then he was just a little bit more of a partisan. I don't know if we could give him credit for like being principled against that or not.
Of course not on principle. I'm sure it was a partisan decision, but. Yeah, I wanted to say, so there are, this is a chill live stream, so there are cats walking around, but it's also live right now. So you made a comment before, like about, I don't know when people will hear this, but I just wanted to make sure you knew that people are seeing it right now.
All right, awesome. No, yeah. Oh, yeah, great.
So no editing or anything, so I mean, other than that, what else is going on?
Well,
I see Israel is striking Syrian targets again.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely nothing new. The only thing new about that is it's a little bit more popularized in the media now, and I'm not sure why they, it was played down for the first few years it was happening. There was over 100 airstrikes, and really the only place you would ever see coverage was Zero Hedge and antiwar.com. And when the Israelis would say, we're not carrying out airstrikes in Syria, but then admit to like hitting Hezbollah targets in Syria, but always just saying, well, we blew up a Hezbollah convoy here and a Hezbollah convoy there, and never really admitting that they were hitting the allies of Assad and therefore the enemies of Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Syria. And who knows, how much that has set back Assad's battle against the jihadist threats and the ISIS threats in Syria. But I mean, this continues. The new thing is that at least to some extent, the Syrian forces have struck back at least once by launching 20 or so rockets into the Golan Heights, which are Syrian territory that's been Israeli occupied for a few decades. And I don't think they even hit anything there. I'm not sure. The initial story I read said they didn't kill anyone. I have since read some things that suggest that maybe a few Israeli soldiers were injured in that attack. But for the most part, there's been no response from the Syrian side. I've seen very little evidence to suggest that the Iranians or the Russians had anything to do with that missile attack that went into the Golan Heights. And it was either carried out by the Assad army or Lebanon Hezbollah fighting for Assad in Syria. And so that's what's going on.
Yeah. Well, here's that article from the most recent strike. And how long ago was that strike where they launched the rockets into the Golan Heights?
I think it was sometime in May. It's been within the past month or so, after Duma, which was at the beginning of May, of course. And that's really, since then, Israel has been a little bit more vocal with their strikes. I had thought that maybe it was just an attempt to provoke Iran into, responding before the Iranian nuclear deal. Trump decided to withdraw from that anyways. But I thought maybe they were trying to provoke Iran, but it's continued since. So,
oh yeah, that's really interesting. And I forgot what else I was just going to bring up something. Oh, did you hear that Sheldon Richman article? So Scott Horton just interviewed Sheldon Richman.
Yeah, I did listen to that interview, and Sheldon Richman is of Jewish heritage, and the article is really cool. It kind of just goes into the fact that, like, when he was growing up, the kind of consensus is that the Israelis were more or less the victims of Palestinian aggression, and I think it was only his grandfather who really had an opposing view. And he really never understood it while his grandfather was alive, but later on, he, came to find out about the Nakba and the massacres of the mostly Muslim Arab citizens of what is now Greater Israel, and has since kind of altered his views on the issue, and now realizes that the Palestinians are the victims of oppression by the Israelis.
Yeah, I really, so I don't think I finished that interview, but I really felt some kind of connection with Sheldon Richman and his relationship with his grandfather, because I never knew. So my grandfather on my mother's side, I never knew, and he died, I think 2 years after I was born. He had all over cancer. And I only found out after the fact that he was like an anti-war Republican, like in the John Birch Society kind of stuff in that sense. And my grandma has since saved a lot of newspaper clippings that he wrote op-eds in local newspapers, and he was always against the wars. And I remember reading a clipping that he wrote prior to Iraq War I against H.W. Bush, saying that, talking about H.W. Bush's oil interests in the Middle East, and he used the terms "let's not spend our blood and treasure in the sand." And so I really wish that, like Sheldon Richman, that I was old enough at the time to understand and to have a conversation with my grandpa about, not just the Middle East, but also libertarianism and voluntarism, because I don't know where he was on that spectrum, but he was an anti-war Republican, super conservative. So it was interesting to get that take from Sheldon Richman.
Yeah, maybe you got some libertarian genes in you there, Pat, and makes you so predisposed to being able to understand the truth here.
That's what I think, Sure. I think I've been able to reach my mom about these issues, at least the war issue. She's a conservative, but and there's some other things I'm trying to work with her on, but she gets the anti-war stuff. So
and that's the most important kind of stuff, right? Like, if you convince somebody on the war issue, you take out a large portion of the budget, and the worst thing that the state does. I mean, I guess the police would be next, but the Pentagon's like just a gigantic police force that does mostly the worst kind of things that the police do.
Yeah, yep. And so she's got that. I mean, we are influencing people, I guess. I think she was most probably convinced because my grandpa was also had these views. So yeah.
Right. Well, and this is like something that's come up for me a lot, and like you, is probably just because of our age, and this is what people could use to dismiss our arguments now. But typically when I have these conversations, they'll say, well, you are naive, you don't understand the world yet, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, really, you think my problem is that I'm naive and because like I care that a 14-year-old got shot by a sniper and I could identify that's wrong. If I just understood the world better, I would understand though that that's just in the context of the larger Israel-Palestine conflict, and there's nothing anyone could do about it, and those people are just going to kill themselves forever, right? This is the perspective of the person who's telling me that I'm naive.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
Come on, man. Come on. Yeah. And it does, I've been so this week I was doing like a bunch of bar studying and stuff, and like it's way more intense than I thought it would be. but I've been a little down in the last week, like with the show and stuff, just the prospects of succeeding. But we got to do this, man. Like, someone has to care, someone has to read, and someone has to care.
Right, and it's important. And this is actually, I had for episode 199 for my show, Monday's show, I had Anthony Samaroff of the Scottish Liberty podcast on, and I've already done that interview. It was great. But for some of the bonus content, I asked him just like about, how as a libertarian do you cope with reading all these negative things? Because, eventually it does get, completely overwhelming. I mean, you have U.S. bombs killing children in Syria and Afghanistan. You have U.S. blockades starving children to death in Yemen. The United States supports the Israeli occupation and, murder of the Palestinians. And then, if you start looking at home, well, the NSA is probably spying on everything that we do. And the police are shooting innocent people in the streets. I just saw Border Patrol executed some poor woman yesterday.
Well, yeah, and Ann Coulter saying that we should just start shooting people at the border, just like at Gaza.
Right. Well, that was one of the amazing things, because I have been saying that, to try and put that situation in context, which I don't even think it's a fair context, because the people in Gaza live in a prison. Yeah. They're blockaded on all sides. At least, as bad as life is for the migrants, and in large part because of the United States drug wars, their lives are complicated and have a lot of problems in their home countries, and we prop up their dictatorial governments. I mean, people are complaining about the people of Honduras coming to the United States, but if you look at it right now, the police forces of Honduras was backed and trained by U.S. Special Forces. And so, these people are going out in the streets and suppressing protesters. And, the more alt-right type people say, well, these people are coming to the United States and they're going to vote for the same policies in their country and mess our country up just like theirs is. And it's like, well, we had a large part in messing up their country. But I was going to say, just the comparison I was making for Gaza, to say how horrified would people be if, they saw on video United States snipers mowing down the people in the migrant caravan, and maybe not even shooting them and killing them like the Israelis were doing to the Palestinians, but simply just shooting them in the kneecaps and the ankles. And people would be horrified. But then Ann Coulter, called for that policy. And I mean, what just a horrid woman she is. I know sometimes she's right on the war stuff, and when she is, take any ally you could get, when they are. But just a terrible person who is so flippant about human life. Of course, unless it's a fetus, and then she waves it around, to smear the leftists. But of course, if that life is of a Honduran trying to come to the United States, or a Gazan, just trying to leave the prison so they don't, just live the most, kind of meaningless lives. They can't have jobs, right? There's only there's 50% unemployment. They're completely blockaded. They don't have a right to leave for travel. They can't import concrete to rebuild their cities. And so, even if you're saying calling for them to just kind of build their own society and innovate, in a lot of ways, they can't do it. I mean, and even then they're finding ways around it. Like some little girl in Gaza figured out a way to use recycled plastic to rebuild homes. And this is because they have no concrete. In Israel, it bombs their homes. And so, I mean, what do you do when the infrastructure is destroyed and you really don't have the machinery to clear the rubble, and you don't have the fuel needed to do it, and you don't have the materials to rebuild after anyways?
Yeah. What a horrible situation.
I forgot what my overall point was there, but
we were talking about Ann Coulter, and then comparing the Gazan situation to our situation at the southern border. Well, I wanted to key into one thing you said about the alt-right types saying that, oh, we have all these migrants coming in and they're just going to vote in a welfare state and all this. But let's turn our eye inwards for a moment. Everyone votes for more government. The leftists vote for more government. The Democrats vote for more government. The Republicans also vote for more government, each in their own different way. I mean, with that argument, we should just deport everyone that goes to a university in this country, or deport all the professors, because they're the opinion molders.
Right. And the fact that everybody just concedes that every single one of these migrants is gonna, vote left wing, when in a lot of ways, their personal values are much more conservative than they are left wing. And basically, if everybody on the right wasn't, calling, I guess I shouldn't generalize as much as, the left wing news titles do, because I think this is like a large portion of the problem, is that they'll say, oh, everybody on the right agrees with Trump that all these people are animals, when Trump was really just calling, the MS-13 people animals or whatever. But everybody just kind of resides the fact that, every single one of these immigrants is just going to be some, lazy person that comes to the United States, hops on welfare and votes for a Democrat the rest of their life. It really doesn't have to be that way at all. You just kind of are saying like, well, there's nothing we could do about it, so we had to build a wall, keep them out, and deport them when they get here. Man, it's insane that you have all these people who are called themselves Ron Paul libertarians who are now suggesting building a massive police force. The Border Patrol is a massive armed police force, and then a gigantic wall. This is a policy to save liberty, is arming the state and building a wall.
Well, let's talk about there's a 100-mile a radius around the border where the Bill of Rights doesn't apply. Have you heard of this?
Right. Yeah. No, I actually had a friend of mine who was driving around Texas, and he was tens of miles away from the border. I forget how many. And, the police came, or they stopped him and they tried to search him. And, he's a libertarian. So he did the, I have the right to be on my way thing. And I think they kind of like, looked around the car and then let him go without showing his ID or whatever. But yeah, 100 miles away from the border in Texas, at the very least, there's Border Patrol set up, and they check IDs and stuff.
Well, and all this energy that goes towards agitating for a wall could be better spent trying to agitate to decrease the welfare state, or to try and secede or something, instead of, if you're going to advocate and play the political game, at least play the political game to decrease the size and scope of government, and you are just advocating to increase the size and scope of government there. If you want a border force, if you want, think of all the pensions, all the military gear, all of the money to build the wall with, and yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if you really want migrants to stop coming to the United States, I think the best thing you could do is advocate for ending the drug war.
Yes.
I think a lot of the smugglers that bring people to the United States that way are associated with the cartels and are probably using similar routes that they use for the drugs and stuff like that. I mean, think about it. They're bringing hundreds of tons of like cocaine into the United States. You really think they can't get a person in? But think about it. So the drugs had to be illegal, and even if the Mexican government wanted to legalize heroin, the United States would flip out and sanction their government, and do all the kind of things that they do to governments of policies that we don't like. So we force all these governments, probably from the northern half of South America all the way up through Central America, to make all the drugs illegal. However, these drugs, because Americans have such a large appetite for getting high, and not, that I essentially, I don't want to condemn drug use. I'm a libertarian. If people want to do that, they should be able to. But, this is billions and billions and billions of dollars and large portions of their economy that go to this. And it has to be a legal black market, which means that it can't be resolved in the courts, which means that people have to use violence to solve their disputes. It means that, they're going to use that money that they get, and it's an awful lot of it, to buy influence in the state. And so it just essentially creates a situation where, at the very least, a large portion of the economies and the estates of the states of all these countries are heavily influenced by people operating in the black market. And the people who succeed in the black market are inherently not great people.
Yep. And I mean, what about Mena, Arkansas, and also, Gary Webb's Dark Alliance series and the Nicaraguan Contras? I mean, you could just, if it's really about drugs, then the deep state wouldn't be involved in trafficking drugs to the United States. If it was really about fighting drug use, then, actions speak louder than words.
Right. Yeah. that's a great point. On top of it is that, it's not even like they actually believe in like the nobility of the drug war is why they're fighting this. The Reagans had the Just Say No campaign, and we're also using cocaine money to smuggle rockets to the Ayatollah. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And so obviously they don't believe in what they say, but at the same time, they still inflict this policy on every other person in the world, and it kills people and it murders people. But, even the second and third hand consequences are, that there's corrupt governments in Mexico, that large portions of Mexico are lawless and controlled by the cartels who impose their, justice systems that most people would never agree to in any way. And they have to resolve their disputes and violence. I mean, just imagine, right? Like, if heroin was sold by, companies that, are just regular companies. When was the last time somebody from Anheuser-Busch shot somebody from Coors?
Yeah.
Does it happen? Does anybody see Walgreens and CVS shooting it out in the streets? What do all these companies do? They run ads and they lower their prices. And so that's one way to go. The other way is to have, these militant, insane cartels that kill people. And I mean, I don't want to make this like, the Donald Trump narrative from this is that, oh, we should be afraid of the Mexican people. Well, that absolutely isn't the case. But, there are very brutal killings that go on in Mexico. And I was talking to this guy named Brian Sadie. He's done some work for the Mises Institute. He's been on my show before, but he was saying that, yeah, up to 80 politicians have died in the most recent Mexican election cycle. And it's just because like you either comply with the cartels or you're going down, because if you're gonna, try to set up police forces that mess up their businesses, well, they're making billions of dollars a year. So they have a lot of influence. They, could buy hitmen, and there's a lot of people who have a lot to lose.
It's insane. Yeah. And my sister's actually going on a mission trip or not a mission trip. Sorry. She's going on a foreign exchange to Mexico too. I think she's going to be in Puebla. So I think that's a relatively safe area, but yeah. And I mean, you mentioned, when's the last time that you saw Walgreens and CVS shooting each other in the streets? They both sling heroin. I mean, let's get real. They both sling heroin.
Right. Yeah. I guess that's even a more apt point than I meant it to be. And I mean, even if you like move, away from like the purely legal stuff and just kind of look at now where there's a lot of these states that have legalized medical marijuana or have like semi-legalized recreational marijuana. None of these dispensaries are shooting each other. Sometimes, people are robbing them because the state doesn't allow them to use regular banking systems and are known to hold large amounts of cash and stuff like that. That's a real problem created by the state. But I mean, you don't have like, the rival, drug dispensary doesn't kick down your door and steal your pot or destroy your business or anything like that. Once you could allow people to use normal arbitration judicial systems, they will. It's preferable. It's better for everyone. It's better for business, right? Like you do better when you don't have to get into a war where 10 of your people die and 3 of your businesses get burned down and, tons of your product get taken in these kind of battles as you try to root out your neighbors. The other option is you just go to court and the court says, well, we've considered all the evidence and we ruled this way, and everybody just, kind of complies with it. And that's the way it could work. Yeah. But, the other way it works is, through the black market, and it's disgusting.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, man. And hitting the nail on the head. So when are your interviews coming up? I know I'm going to keep doing this live stream probably. We got the Libertarian Union come. Is that your next one?
Yeah, I got the Libertarian Union stuff. I'll probably end up hopping off early because I'm interviewing Scott a couple hours after that, and then Mance a couple hours after that. So it just filled up with interviews today. It was great talking to you, Pat.
Yeah. I mean, feel free to stay if you want to. I'm just going to be chilling probably.
All right.
Yeah. So I had this, the wife and I started watching this documentary about Rajneeshpuram Bhagwam. Have you heard of? It was an Indian like spiritualist communist commune that solidified itself in Oregon during the 80s. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
It's insane, dude. It is insane.
I once watched a Netflix documentary that was like had some guy who like grew out his hair and just claimed to be a guru and like started like was like, I'm making this whole thing up totally, and got like 15 people to like follow him and dedicate his life. It was like, it's crazy like how, you know, I don't know how people just have the psychology to go like that, but it happens.
Yeah, I mean it's just crazy. This oh, he did die, this Bagwam guy, but I mean the story is on. Yeah, he died in the 90s.
Well, now
what?
Now the ending's ruined.
Well, that's not the ending. I mean, he died from like natural causes, I think, right? Well, that's what it's. I mean, he was.
Now I don't have to watch it.
Well, he was born in 1931 and he died in 1990, so he probably died of old age, honey.
Oh.
Yeah.
Pat, you're spoiling all the plots.
I know. I mean, it happened in real life. Okay, so basically what happened, Kyle, is that they came over. They were like, he had like, I don't know, 10,000 followers, and they were all over the world. And it started in India, and India wasn't being friendly to him, so they kicked him out, and he left, and he started this commune in Oregon. Like, he bought a huge tract of land about 19 miles outside of the nearest town in Oregon, and he started this huge commune. And like, I'm talking, they were bringing in like buildings and stuff. And the town, the nearest town that had jurisdiction over this land that they had bought, like huge tracts, wanted to start kicking them out because the town was full of conservatives and whatever, and they didn't like the free love, free sex that the Bagwam and his followers were having. So they tried to have this action to use the power of government to kick them off this land that they bought. Well, all of a sudden, the Bagwams are like, okay, well, we don't want to leave. We're going to self-preserve. So they started fighting over the power of the city government. And then they took it over, the Rajneeshis. They came and took it over and took over the whole town. And then there was this huge standoff. The Rajneeshis militarized. And like, they're all fighting over the power of the government to like either exist or don't exist. And then it turns out that the Rajneeshis wanted more clout, political clout. So they started importing all of these homeless people to the commune in Rajneeshistan, like this independent nation that, well, it wasn't independent because they had filed for the city protection. And so it turns out they import like thousands of homeless people into this commune. And then they started giving them, was it Halidol, honey? It turns out that this whole time, the Rajneeshis had been drugging these homeless people with Halidol. So they would come to the commune and they would be like, you know, all in touch with the guru stuff. And I mean, this is just a story of people fighting over the power of government. It's insane. And I've never heard anything about it.
Yeah, it's crazy that like that could happen, and that's like not something they would ever teach anyone, or you would really hear about. They'll teach all about like, every presidential election or something like that. But that seems a lot like more of an interesting story to me than James Garfield getting elected over whoever the hell.
Yeah. No, it was a crazy, like, I want to do a show about it. And that was just like a brief retelling of this long, complicated thing. So maybe we'll do a show on it. So I made a bet with my wife that she wouldn't read Fool's Errand. $10 that she wouldn't read Fool's Errand.
Page 1.
She's on page 1.
All right, well, there you go. This is good. I think I could use this one too. And spending $10 to get somebody to read Fool's Errand is well worth it.
Heck yeah.
So, it's an amazing book too. I mean, it gets my highest endorsement. I feel like I learned something profound like every other page. Not like learning little details every single page, but like reading something that like honestly made you like kind of had to re-understand the way you look at the wars. And that book has been a part of kind of this greater understanding for me, because you hear all these things about the wars and you're always thinking like, yeah, that doesn't seem like it would be true because it doesn't seem like that would help to win the war. But then you realize that it's not about winning the wars. Like that's if that's the goal they say, but that's not the goal at all.
Well, if it was about winning the war, then they would have a concrete objective. It would be defined what winning means.
Right. Yeah, they obviously can't do that. And at the same time, that they would have to also, I guess, eventually admit when it's absolutely failed, right? Like the war in Afghanistan was supposed to be over how many years ago? The goal was, to get the Taliban out of power and kill Osama bin Laden. Well, that was done once. And now guess what? The Taliban control, like, I think, contest at least half of the country now and outright control like near a third of it. So,
yeah. And, well, one of the biggest things for me was realizing that, like, learning about Osama bin Laden's fatwas, and that hits you right in the first chapter of the book. And I didn't know anything about it before I read the book, not for the most part. And I guess the most striking part, aside from, realizing that Osama bin Laden was very upfront with his grievances against the United States and explained exactly why he did or was doing what he wanted, what he did, but also realizing that, the Taliban and Al-Qaeda are not the same thing. And then realizing and learning about how, I can't remember the name of the Taliban leader, but how he described Osama bin Laden as a chicken bone stuck in his throat that he can neither swallow it or spit it out. And why are we there?
I have no idea why we're there anymore. Because it's hard to figure out, like, what would even the goal be? Obviously, I think at this point, you're never going to secure 100% of Afghanistan from the Taliban. I'm not sure if you were talking about that quote, I believe, was from Mullah Omar, who was the ruler or controller of the Taliban up until I think he died in 2013, but nobody even knew until 2015. Or it may have been that he died in 2015, then to 2017. I forget which one. Either way, he was actually kind of a uniting force of the Afghanistan or the Taliban. But even then, I don't know how unite the Taliban war. This idea that we could have like a negotiated settlement where everybody who claims to be a Taliban leader is going to agree to and not continue to fight against the government, again, seems impossible. So there's definitely no outright victory in Afghanistan. Now, maybe they could say, well, we're going to secure Kabul and all the district capitals, and then we'll call that good enough. But if that's your goal, then it's just going to be undone when you leave. So, I mean, there just needs to be an admission. And, Trump had the political ability to do this when he took office, to just say, hey, my predecessors lost the war in Afghanistan. There's no victory for America here. And then say, I win for bringing us home, right? I made the best possible decision with what was put in front of me.
Yeah, and that's what you would think that would be enough. I mean, I know he has other influences, but you would think that, and Peter Schiff has made this point all the time too with the economy, is that, okay, Trump is elected and now he takes credit for, candidate Trump was saying that, oh, everything's a bubble. Everything's a bubble. The real unemployment rate is actually 40% or 50%. And, he's saying, oh, everything's screwed, it sucks now. But as soon as he is elected, it's his economy and it's his Dow 22,000 points or 23,000 points. And what he really needed to do was just say, hey, I inherited this mess from my predecessors. Now I need to, we need to have the recession, which is the cure for the boom. If you understand the Misesian Austrian theory, the business cycle, why didn't he just say, okay, Obama and Bush screwed this up. We have to bring rates up to, a normal 10% or 8%, and it's going to suck for a long while, but that's what we need. The same thing with Afghanistan. And that's not to go ahead. And then I have another point too.
I just want to, I get that quote from Trump, right? He called it a big, fat, ugly bubble.
Yeah.
And I think at one point he even made the, like, in like a comparison to Rosie O'Donnell. So before the election, the economy is Rosie O'Donnell. And then after it's, Trump's beautiful, Melania economy, right? Like he pretends like everything's big and great. And it's just like you could like just stayed consistent with your campaign rhetoric and been fine. But it's you know, the old Horton's law. Anything the politicians promise that would be good, they're gonna reverse on, and any of their bad promises they'll keep. We'll see. I don't think he's gonna keep the promise on the wall though. I don't think that a government project that big can be successful. I guess I think it's impossible that the wall will be successful, but I think it's impossible too that it actually gets built in somewhat of a, you know, actual way. I mean, they may be able to build like a couple 100 miles of nice fence here or there and be, you know, take some footage of having a nice wall, but you know, it's a couple 1,000 miles of border. I think there's no way.
Yeah, no, I don't think it'll happen either. And I think we'd go bankrupt before that would happen. I mean, I really think that that's what we're looking at in the next few years is just a Soviet-style collapse. I mean, the deficits are just exponentially growing. At some point, something's got to give. And I mean, that's what I wanted to talk about this, like Peaceful Treason has been having a series. They're a podcast that I'm friends with as well. And they're having a series talking about like, okay, what is the end game here? Like, how do we get to Ancapistan? What are the different theories? My theory is that, I mean, Ron Paul's theory is that we're going to have a Soviet-style collapse. The United States is going to balkanize. At least that's my hope, that all the states would secede now that the federal government goes bankrupt. But at the time that we go through that Soviet-style collapse, it's either going to usher in the New World Order, whatever you want to call it. It's either going to do that, or we have to meet people with the message. Or, you know, I can't tell the future, but I think that's our opportunity. What Ron Paul has been saying is that when the empire finally implodes on itself because of spending, we're going to have to be there with the message.
Yeah, so unpopular opinion time. I think the problem with that is I don't see the United States having the kind of leader to make that happen. Now, you know, you say whatever you want about Russian leadership, but Gorbachev, when the time came when the failure of the Soviet Union was obvious and intimate, rather than deciding to try to stronghand Abraham Lincoln style, you know, take over all these, you know, countries and military force and hold the Soviet Union together as long as possible, decided to let these countries starting to break off and, you know, kind of form their own independent state, and didn't put up any contestant. He didn't roll the Red Army into any of these city capital or state capitals and say, nope, you're not leaving, this is mine. He let it happen. And I think on the American side, we're much more likely to get leaders like Abraham Lincoln. They're going to send in the, you know, military, and they're going to say, absolutely not. Can you, I'm not sure. Maybe, I don't know if Donald Trump would let like California go. I think he would fight to keep it, you know, and I think, you know, what one of the things too is that the deep state will want to keep it together, and they will all say, well, Mr. President, this is the 8th largest economy in the world. There's no possible way you could let them leave. Definitely, if you look at the left-wing side, can you imagine what Hillary Clinton would do? There's no way if Texas wanted to secede that she would let them leave. Right, it would be impossible. She would, you know, go in and fight, and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Americans would die as a result. So, I guess it would just depend what leaders in charge. The only thing I guess that makes me a little bit skeptical that the bankruptcy is near is just that I think the American dollar is backed by the American military. And so long as the American military is capable of going into these smaller theaters and kicking anyone else out, I think they could continue to keep the empire with enough fuel to stay alive. Now, eventually, China and Russia and other regional powers will be able to prevent America from going into these smaller theaters and finding ways to make money, like in Yemen, right? You wouldn't think that this makes American money because we're not like stealing Yemeni oil or anything like that. But then again, Saudi Arabia is buying billions of dollars worth of product from the United States to fight that war. So we're absolutely, you know, making money off it. And, you know, the same thing with Israel. While we give them money, they also spend a lot of money on defense from the Americans and that's how we can, made some money off of some of these theaters and in some of these, regions. And then we get lucrative deals from warlords and stuff like that. But you see China starting to expand their influence into Africa. Russia certainly seems to be less willing to let the Americans meddle around in their backyard of the Middle East than they were before. And eventually, 12 aircraft carriers could do a lot. But at some point, I think the regional, powers in Russia and China will start to overwhelm America's ability there. And at that point, I think you would see like kind of the bankruptcy and collapse.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can't say I disagree with anything that you've said. My thought is that just coming from like the economic standpoint is that while the federal deficit keeps climbing, it'll be like, I don't know, 1 trillion more in debt per year. And if interest rates right now are at like between 1.5 and 1.75%, I believe. And like if the deficit is that high, the national debt is like, I don't know, 21 trillion, almost 22 trillion right now. If interest rates go up to, let's say, like 10 or 15%, which would be normalizing, then just servicing the debt, servicing the interest payments on the federal debt is going to be so much money. And then, how do we pay for that? Well, we keep printing. And if we keep printing, I think that someone is eventually going to be like, okay, they're never paying us back. I'm not quite as well versed on the international economic stuff as I used to be, but
yeah, it's a complicated kind of thing, because I think in one sense, acknowledging that the Americans will never pay you back means that you'll stop financing their debt. But at the same time, that means that all that debt that you already have, you're probably not going to get paid back for. And so I'm sure there's a lot of people who will make the calculation that, if we could, just let the Americans keep believing that they have their economy, at least then they'll keep paying us back the money when it comes due. And that's our best bet. So I don't know. I don't see any country really, they talk about the challenges like to the American, petrodollar and global hegemony as far as it goes with being able to lend money and stuff like that and having the world reserve currency. I don't know. I don't see the Americans kind of losing that quite so quickly. And like I said, I think our military force is what really bats our dollar. And it's as terrible as it is, and the fact that we can't win these wars means one thing, but at the end of the day, we're still the overwhelming power and could wipe cities off the planet even without using nuclear weapons. I mean, just using our conventional weapons and army, we could do what we want.
And sanctions too. Yeah.
Sanctions are huge.
I'm having Thijs Vanderlinde in the chat asking to join. I might send him a link here.
Okay.
Yeah, man. I mean, well, one thing that I've kept my eye on has just been the fact that Russia and China are taking steps to bypass the petrodollar system and trade oil in gold-backed currencies. And if that happens, I don't know. Like I haven't been paying attention on this issue to speak well enough on it as I used to be able to with like when I was listening to Peter Schiff every single day, and or I know that James Corbett has done a lot on China and Russia's steps to create like an alternative to the petrodollar system, but
yeah, it seems to me to be all an illusion at this point anyways. I mean, what the hell is $21 trillion of debt, right?
Yeah.
You can't even conceptualize that amount of money or what it means, or the fact that we've spent $6 trillion or something near that in the Middle East. So, I mean, as long as the illusion's there, even if Russia and China start trading in some gold-backed currency for oil or something like that, I think the Americans will be able to maintain the the global illusion for quite some time to come.
Yeah, that or they'll switch to, because I also have the book by Jim Rickards talking about the death of money. I forgot what it's called, the death of money or something. And he talks about how the plans is already in place to switch to a different world reserve currency called the SDR, which is a special drawing rights. And he says, I think that the dollar will just become like a local currency. So in the United States, we'll trade with it, but the real reserve currency will be only for states to trade back and forth, or for international deals or international commerce. And I'm not quite sure how that'll work yet, but it might be a cryptocurrency or some kind of thing like that.
Yeah, I've heard about this before, and it basically, I think the idea is that this currency would be formed, a new fiat currency would be formed, and then bail out the American fiat currency, and then this would kind of be a world currency, but I'm guessing that would be under the control of the Western countries, and so maybe the Americans would have to give up some of their hegemony, but they would still, you know, be largely in control of the currency, and they would use it to bail out the American currency. And I mean, it's not a long-term solution to the problem, but years or a decade, or I don't know how many, much longer that currency would make it than the current one. But
yeah, who knows? I mean, it'd be under the control of the IMF. I know that much. But I wanted to, before Thice comes on, or I think Thice is coming on, but I wanted to talk, we were talking about Afghanistan. I wanted to go back to that and talk about how, if I'm understanding this article correctly, the one by Jim Bovard, and let me do a screen share here. We were talking about this earlier, about how the Afghan National Army is full of child molesters, and how people support the Taliban because the Taliban does not put up with these child molesters. And it's just a really interesting take.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that we have going on, is that it turns out that the people that oppose the Taliban in Afghanistan also happen to rape little boys. And so whenever the Americans are making their calculation of, well, do we want to bat these Afghan warlords, or do we want to have to find some other way, if even possible, to defeat the Taliban, likely involving our own troops? Well, the decision will be is that we'll use the child rapist over over using our own troops. And these are the kind of calculations that America has made time and time again throughout the terror war. And every single time, it makes the situation worse, and it makes more people hate us, and it makes the lives so much worse for the people who live in the Middle East. And it's never going to work out in a positive way.
Yeah, it's so sad, man. And the fact that American soldiers have to sit there in their camps and listen to the ANA soldiers raping little boys in the middle of the night. And if the American soldiers even take any action against it, they will be reprimanded by the U.S. Army.
Right. And I don't know how rampant the problem is. I think there's some of the alternative media sources that have made it out to be more than it is, but it definitely occurs. And just one occurrence of this is enough for people to understand that the Americans are immoral when it comes to them caring for the Afghani people, and helps to turn, I'm sure, the popular opinion against the Americans. And also it shows that the Taliban, for all their faults, have a system of justice where this kind of thing is not allowed, and that makes the Taliban preferable to some people.
What we really need, what I really wanted to, and we mentioned this before, and it's, you with us, Thice?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just listening, taking it in. Yeah.
No worries, man. Maybe Thice would be interested in this too, is that, so we're talking about, I don't know how versed you are in Afghanistan, Thice, but we're talking about the local Pashtun tribes that live in the southern part of the country, and how the Pashtun people have a system of law that is called the Pashtun Wali. And it's a customary law with no state involvement, but the Pashtun people see that as more equitable and more fair than the American judicial system that we've come in and imposed on them in certain areas.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't familiar with the system, but I do know something about that Afghanistan is like a tribal society and so on. Those ties are very strong, but I'm not familiar with that legal system now.
Yeah, I'm not either. I've been interested in learning more about it, though.
Yeah.
So,
sorry.
Yeah. So how's it going, buddy? Any so Dice has been on the show before, and we were talking about him starting his own podcast with libertarian legal sphere perspective from the European side. So how's that going, buddy?
Yeah, so I my logo should probably be finished sometime this week. That's what I'm kind of waiting for, and I've already registered a website, and I hope that I can launch next week. But I do have a couple episodes to record, basically for my first launch. But I have a lot of things set up already. So yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, and we'll have to. Dice and I recorded an episode over spring break a couple months ago that I'm gonna have to put in the podcast feed before you launch.
Yeah. We'll see when it's convenient. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should we? How much more time you gonna be on? You think, Kyle?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm actually gonna hop off so I can eat lunch before the State of the Libertarian Union podcast later today, our talk show later today. I hope everybody could tune into that when we put it up, but it should be a lot of fun. Thanks so much for having me on again, Pat, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, sounds good, buddy.
2 hours.
Yeah, see you later. Yeah, so Dice, how's it going? Otherwise, you said you were pretty busy with school.
Yeah, I'm kind of relaxing right now. I had a paper, but that's basically almost done, and I had 2 papers basically that had to be handed in this week, so it was a little bit hectic. But right now I have a kind of a break, so I'm just sort of enjoying the weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Is it nice there? It's so nice. It's like 90 degrees outside.
Yeah, it's like 25 Celsius or something. I'm not sure what it is in Fahrenheit, but yeah, it's probably similar. Yeah.
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 So, yeah. Did you have anything in mind you wanted to talk about?
Not particularly, but I could suggest something. Maybe you have any ideas? I'm sort of improvising.
Yeah. Well, I was watching some stuff about the UK, and so apparently now there's journalists going to jail for saying the wrong things.
Yeah, I heard something about it. That Tommy Robinson, right? He was reporting. What I understood is that he was reporting on the sort of the rape gang cases in UK, and that he had some sort of gag order to that he couldn't report on it. And now he's been arrested. Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, I mean, excuse me, that's pretty much what I heard too.
Yeah.
I mean, that would never stand in the United States.
Yeah, the UK is really going down the drain as far as I'm concerned, with the Count Dankula case and the Alfie Evans case, and this one. It's kind of like UK is determined to go to follow Orwell's example, basically.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, so you got to think something's got to give at some point.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's there's a lot of European political spirit is very pro welfare state, and we have very most European countries, mine included, have these hate speech laws and so on. And just as an example, there's a big I believe I talked about that in sometime in the past, but there's a local politician here, and he said something about Moroccans, and he's also being prosecuted. He basically said that he wanted less Moroccans. The exact short sentence was like, do you want less or more Moroccans? And then everyone shouted less, and then he's being prosecuted for that. So that's going into appeal, and yeah. So yeah, it's insulting someone can be illegal in the Netherlands.
That's insanity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
especially when you insult a protected group, because everything has to be identity politics, of course.
Yeah,
of
course. Well, I got into an argument on Well, I didn't get into an argument on Facebook, but kind of concerns American law. But there's this HBO special that's starting on HBO. It's called succession, like Succession.
Oh.
And I said succession. How about secession? Like, let's succeed. And I was trolling super hardcore. And of course, all the lefties came out. The never Trumpers came out.
Yeah.
I thought it was ironic because if they're never Trump, then wouldn't they want the federal government to have the least amount of power as possible?
Yeah, it's all partisan bullshit basically, because you just know if Trump loses the midterm, you just know that all the Democrats are going to be, oh yeah, it's federal government's great, everything. Yeah, it's just it's all back and forth, and all these hashtag the resistance. It's not actually resistance. It's just another blue versus red team sports. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty depressing.
Yeah. So how are things with bar prep? You have to put a lot of hours in already, or when you have your test? You know.
So the bar exam starts on July 25th.
Okay.
So I have orientation on the night of the 24th, and then it's 8 hours. 9 hours, I think, on Wednesday the 25th, and then another 9 hours on Thursday the 26th. So the first day is a 4-hour period of essays in the morning, and then another 4 hours of essays in the afternoon. And then the next day, I think all day it's just 120 multiple choice problems.
Okay, yeah, sounds pretty intense. Yeah.
And I spent Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week, I spent 8 hours in the library on each day studying.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it seems like it would be necessary. Yeah.
It's so much, dude. But you guys have a test too, don't you?
Yeah, we have a little bit different system. So, as I understand it, in the US, you have to take a regular college bachelor or something first, and then you go to law school, and then you take bar. But here it's basically going into law school right away, and then eventually you have to take a special test in order to be a practicing attorney. But I do believe it's a lot less intense than the bar in the US. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. No, I remember. I think in our first episode you were saying what the steps are. So it's right to law school, huh?
Yeah, it's right from secondary, from high school, basically right to law school. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I went to that. I got an English degree.
Lot of good that will get you on the labor market.
Yeah, right. I think all the good it does me now is that I write fiction in my spare time.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think it's improved my writing skills, but
yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
I had to relearn how to write when I started law school because, with creative writing, you're all focused on prose and how that goes and stuff. Sorry for the notification. I got to shut that off.
Yeah.
So it's totally different kind of writing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very it's much more technical. You have to get to the point right away. So yeah.
Yeah.
I've been interested in doing some more creative stuff myself. I'm not sure what yet, but yeah.
Well, there's a big difference between, being preoccupied with politics and stuff, and economics and all the tangible sciences, but then you get to go over to fiction, and that is just way less complicated, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's
Are you thinking about publicizing those things, or do you want to write them for yourself first?
Well, I have done some things. I have publicized some things.
Okay. Are those on the website? Or?
Yeah, nothing on the website yet, but I do have a short story that I wrote. I could put it on the website.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, it would be cool. For my senior project, I wrote a story about a Canadian truck driver who was dealing with his wife died from cancer, and this is him 2 years after his wife died, and he goes on this long trip across Canada, and he on the way he like realizes that he's being reckless because he wants to die because he's never dealt with his wife's past, like his mind. So I mean, I usually write horror fiction, but this was like just a very kind of pondering story.
Yeah, it sounds pretty intense.
Yeah, it was, because like he keeps taking these risks and like going in really bad weather, and then he realizes he's trying to kill himself. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, anything else happening in the Netherlands?
In Netherlands, not a whole lot right now. We just had city council elections a couple months ago, and yeah. Oh yeah, did you hear about the GDPR? I think.
No.
It's a general data privacy protection regulation or something, and yeah, everyone in the entire in all of Europe has getting like 500 emails. Oh, we have to update our privacy policy.
Oh god.
It took effect like yesterday, and yeah, it's enormous bureaucratic project. Yeah.
I might have had to do something about that because I have an email list with the podcast. I don't know if I have any European, recipients, but
yeah, it's like they created a very wide scope for this regulation. So basically, anyone who deals with the EU citizens has to deal with this thing. Yeah, it's basically, we had a couple of years ago, we had like a cookie law. So those things on the website that you have to click through, but everyone just accepts them. So nothing actually changes.
Yeah,
it's probably the same here. Just a giant show, but yeah, everyone basically does the same thing because no one's gonna read through like all those pages of privacy policies. Yeah.
Well, I saw that with Mewe because I was logging in the other day and they had that privacy update. And
yeah, I saw it too. Yeah.
I actually read I skimmed through the terms and conditions.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't think it's any different than Facebook, their privacy policies or their hate speech policy. I think it's just that Facebook is more active in like censoring people, whereas Mewe just says that like speech considered to be harassing or,
Yeah, and Mewe has some different incentives probably because their unique selling point basically is sort of being better than Facebook. So if they start to crack down like that, then they'll collapse basically. So yeah, they have a lot more incentive to be restrained.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So maybe that'll keep them in check.
Yeah, I hope. Because it's pretty awesome to have a good Facebook alternative.
Yeah, it is.
As long as you can get people to join. Yeah.
I'm not like a big. Have you ever tried? You've tried Minds.com, right?
Well, I don't have an account, I think, but I do have Steam it, and yeah. I do have a couple of some alternative platforms, but not really online, I think.
Hey,
it's
man,
also a crypto place, right?
Can you do me a favor and check your microphone settings? Because there's a little bit of an echo.
Let's see, how do I do that?
With the gear icon, is it picking up your? Do you have a USB microphone?
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I have something in my headset, so it might. Let's see.
Yeah,
is this better or not?
That's a little better. You might have to keep talking.
Okay, so ABC test. Is this better?
Yeah, that's actually a bit better. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, this might be the one on my headset.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is better. But
okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been a little like disappointed with the libertarian scene in the last week or so. Like just people, you know how libertarians are. We all like to correct each other.
Yeah.
I'm kind of sick of that, man.
Yeah, I was thinking about it too recently, and I thought like the smaller you are as a group, and libertarians are pretty small, and it's quite important to have that social cohesion, basically. So yeah, that's definitely, I think, one of the weaknesses of the libertarian movement, because we all read giant amounts of Rothbard and so on. We know our theory, but yeah, we do like hitting each other over the head with, "Oh, you're not principled enough." So yeah, it's kind of the weakness. Yeah.
There is like, it is too, and there's semantics too. It's like when we're correcting each other, it's not about, like, sometimes it's over like really important principle stuff, but other times it's just like, you, like, there was a philosopher, you know, the philosopher.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I saw a post that she made, and like the way that she phrased it, there was something that I could have critiqued with it, but I knew the point that she was getting at, you know, like I knew what she was implying, you know, and if I would have critiqued her, it would have just been over semantics, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And not about anything principled, really.
Yeah.
And she would have come back and been like, "Yeah, I know."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I've seen her around on Mewe and Facebook and stuff.
Yeah, I follow it too, I think. Yeah. So you said it was like a warm temperature with you where you were at as well, or 90 degrees Fahrenheit? I'll look it up.
92.
92. Yeah.
Oh, there's Kyle spam commenting the YouTube chat now, the live chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so yeah, it's really nice out, man, and it's been hard to stay inside and study this whole time, or like do indoor work.
Yeah, same here. Yeah. Yeah, so if I can tell you what I've been up to the last couple of weeks a bit. So I've really been diving into after you made that Stoic episode. I've really been diving into that book, and it's pretty cool. There's like a discussion group that I'm part of on Facebook. Still on Facebook, unfortunately, but yeah. And it is, yeah, I've been reading through that book. It's pretty interesting as well.
Is that the Daily Stoic, or is that like what was the other one? The struggle is the goal, or something?
Yeah, one book is the obstacle is the way, I think, but that's not the one I have.
Oh,
I've been reading 366 meditations.
Oh.
They have like two. One is a bunch of meditations basically, and the other is a journal.
Yeah, that one is. What I need to do is, like, because I haven't been keeping up with the Stoic stuff. I'm the worst. Like, I'll do a show on something and it will help me for a week or two, and then I'll abandon it.
Yeah.
Because like you have to do it every single day, man. And to this point, I haven't had like a daily routine.
Yeah, that's also something might be able to refer you. This like this website. It's developgoodhabits.com, and they have a lot of interesting posts on morning routines and so on, and how to build a routine that sticks. And I've been looking into that the last weeks as well. So yeah, that might also be useful for you if you're interested.
Yeah, it might. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it now, actually. Maybe I could screen share it. Well, I got to give a hat tip to our buddy Anthony Samaroff from the Scottish Liberty podcast, because he has beyourselfandloveit.com.
Okay. Yeah.
And he does the same thing with the routines.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but this is, I mean, talking about this is totally applicable to the podcast, because I'm sure a lot of people that listen to my show are young men who could be dealing with this struggle in their life. What was the other one that you mentioned?
Developgoodhabits.com.
.com. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So here's Anthony Samaroff's page.
Yeah.
And then here's the developgoodhabits.com.
Yeah, so free advertising, basically. I'm not getting commission here. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting because it's like I just bought also this book from this website. It's called I have this concept called habit stacking, and basically the idea is that you already have some habits like getting up and having breakfast, and what you do is basically you tie a couple of tiny habits, you string them together, and then you build them into your morning, for instance, and that makes it a lot easier to stick to a habit like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about those habits.
Yeah. It's also the Aristotle quote, like what was it? Excellence is not an act, but a habit. We are what we repeatedly do, or something. That's quite I think that's quite an applicable quote as well, because kind of, it also ties into the Stoic idea that you really focus only on what you're capable of controlling. You're only capable of controlling your actions, and then you should focus on that first, and that helps you navigate the world, basically.
Yeah, and we should, as libertarians, we really need to keep that in mind too, because falling into Facebook arguments or getting stressed about some stupid story that you see on Facebook, or like the newest outrage, or people talking about how we need to be disarmed and stuff on the internet, or interacting with people that disagree with you. We really just need to keep this in mind. I need to keep it in mind too.
Yeah.
I see lots of people wasting hours and hours on Facebook arguments. And I've done it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
But what's the point?
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, you can lead a horse to water, but you can only
yeah, exactly.
They have to drink, something like that. So yeah, you can only focus on telling your story, and then what someone else does is just up to them, basically.
Yeah, and we just waste our time with it, man. That's all we do. We're just wasting our time.
Yeah.
When we could be, reading a book, spending that time reading a book and improving ourselves, or cleaning our rooms.
Yeah, like Jordan Peterson said. Yeah.
Or like me taking my own advice, because I mean, look at this right here of what I'm highlighting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these stacks of books, I have so many books. These stacks of books have been here for a few months. There's literally no other place to put them in the apartment.
Yeah.
And
well, there are worse things to hoard. It's like I saw somewhere like it's not called hoarding if it's books, then it's a collection. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or on this side.
Yeah.
Let's see. Here's the take that you don't get in my normal content, I guess, is, let's see, where's my pointer? Yeah, these are all books that I just bought from Amazon. That's where they went, because there's no other place for them. And that's I have a few records here, but this is signed by Charlie Coyle, who plays for the Minnesota Wild, and that's a Jason Pominville bobblehead. So show and tell time.
Yeah. Yeah, most of the books I've been buying have been on Kindle, because I already have like a overstuffed book closet. So yeah.
Well, Kindle's nice. I just can't bring myself to read anything on.
Yeah, there's definitely a sort of a mental difference between like physical paper and digital text here.
If you can manipulate it with your, so I have this I have this phone app where I've been reading Michelle Chossudovsky's book, The War on Terror, America's War on Terror. Let's see. And I've been able to, I really do this thing where I I like the when the black, if you can get like a black. I'm doing a terrible job at explaining this. Sorry. If
the text, the backlight, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you can change the color. Yeah.
And now my phone app isn't working, but yeah. So I really like to where I can do this, you know, where it's black and then the white is there, and then you can manipulate it a little bit with highlighting certain passages. I was reading For a New Liberty that way because, you know, the Mises Institute has those hundreds and hundreds of books.
Yeah.
For a New Liberty is such a good book.
Yeah. It's basically, it's like the first, it's probably like #1 book MCAP should be reading, because it's very, like, to the point. It's not like a huge, it's not like a pie in the sky thing, but it's like a very concrete examples and building theory from the ground up. Yeah.
Well, and it really made me think about like bail arguments. Yeah, see, it really made me think about bail arguments because, you know, at that point, oh, hey, what's up? Mike Tilden.
Here I am.
Battle for...
Hello.
Yeah, Mike, did you read We got you?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry about that.
Oh, have you read For a New Liberty?
Oh, absolutely. So in all of my stories that I tell about converting to libertarianism, I start with the acknowledgement that I came to libertarianism very slowly as a minarchist, and that it was For a New Liberty that just shoved me over the cliff into being an anarchist or a voluntarist, if you prefer that label.
Yeah. I do voluntarism. I think like there's this big debate right now on like how we should brand ourselves, right? Because Jeff Deist went on the Tom Woods show and they were talking about if the word libertarian actually means anything anymore, which I don't think it does, really.
No, it's become so segmented, and there's so many offshoots, and so many people choose to describe themselves as anarcho this, anarcho that, you know, libertarian this, libertarian party. I mean, there's just too many. It doesn't make any sense. So I've been using libertarian less and less because it gets associated with the Libertarian Party. And even on my own podcast, I think it's episodes 9 and 10, I do a back-to-back 2-episode education session on what voluntarism is and why it's preferable to the label anarchism. And, you know, we don't have to go into that now because I literally just hijacked this conversation and jumped on without telling you.
No worries, dude. Yeah, that's what this is for.
You said jump on whenever, so I took you seriously. I can't make the chat later today. My wife thinks I'm in the office paying a bill, which I am, but I was like, hey, my microphone's right here. I'm gonna jump on real quick.
Dude, that's great. Yeah. Yeah. Man, what were we talking? Oh, yeah, Liberty. Though, yeah, let's plug your show, Mike, because I don't think you've ever appeared on any Liberty Weekly stuff.
No, I haven't. So I've been on the Libertarian Union, State of the Libertarian Union show, but I've not been on Liberty Weekly yet. And you're on my list of guests as well. I'm going to have you on my show pretty soon. I've got actually 2 or 3 different topics that I think you'd be great for. But anyways, I'm the host. My name is Mike Tilden. I'm the host of the Battle for Liberty, which you can find at battleforliberty.com. You can find the podcast specifically listed with iTunes and Stitcher. But it's been around long enough now that any podcatcher, if you search for Battle for Liberty, you'll find it. So just search Battle for Liberty. On Twitter, I'm My Battle Liberty, and Facebook.com/Battle for Liberty. So that's how you can find me. The show is geared towards what I call the journey of the libertarian novice, because I was quite the statist for many, many years. And my conversion, as I already spoke about, my conversion was pretty slow from total full-on statist to minarchist to voluntarist. And that conversion started, oh boy, probably 6 or 7 years ago now. And at that time, I was a police officer. So I have a lot of really good stories to tell about going from being the man to fighting the man.
Hell yeah. And here's the website for everyone interested at battleforliberty.com. It's a great, and man, dude, Mike, you seriously, listening to your earlier episodes, I don't know if I've heard another podcast that has been able to put these ideas forward so accurately and so succinctly and so easy to understand. Like, it's really great. So if you're new, go to battleforliberty.com. I really should be plugging this because I do have people who listen who are new to this. So head over there. Don't listen to me. Go listen to Mike Tilden and then come back.
Listen to both. All right. Listen to both. Listen to lots and lots of different podcasts, because I can attest becoming addicted to one particular show. You'll quickly burn out on it, and then you won't come back for a long time. I'm currently in that cycle now. I've been, even when I was a talk radio junkie, yes, back in the day, I listened to Rush Limbaugh and Mark Levin and Sean Hannity and all of them. I listened to all of them all the time. Oh, and Glenn Beck, man. I listened to all of them. And if, I would go in cycles where I would listen to one every single day for like 6 months, and then I wouldn't listen to them again for maybe a year, because you just get sick of them. So my advice is, with all of the great podcasts that are out there, listen to all of them. At least I don't expect that you're listening to my show every single week. I would expect that if you find my show and that you like it, that you come back every couple of weeks and go, oh, there's a couple new episodes, which of course has not been the case for quite a long time. But if you want to know more about that, go to battleforliberty.com.
Yeah, I'm empty to do right now as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So maybe an interesting question for you, or should I first introduce myself a little bit?
Either way. Go ahead.
Okay. So, Patrick and me know each other a couple months now, 6 months, I'm not sure. We met through a Facebook group, and I've been on his show. I've done made a recording with him now from my future show, Gaius Libertatis, and I'm a patron as well. So that was my short introduction. And my question was, do you listen to any non-libertarian political podcasts? Because recently, for example, I've been listening to the Ben Shapiro show, for example, and it's quite interesting, but the contrast and some similarities, and but also a lot of differences, especially on foreign policy. So I wonder if you listen to some of those as well.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Okay, yeah, sure. So it's funny, as soon as you said, are there any podcasts you listen to that are non-libertarian, the very first thing I thought of was Ben Shapiro. Yeah. I put Ben Shapiro in the exact same category with Steven Crowder. And the reason I do is because I actually really enjoy what both of those guys do. From Steven Crowder, man, coming from his background of being a comedian and being a very intelligent guy, a very entrepreneurial guy, there's a lot I admire there. I mean, a lot. He's a great presenter, a great speaker. You can tell he's motivated and hardworking and has done his homework. The same goes for Ben Shapiro. But boy, they're both could not be classified as libertarians, not even close. I mean, they're both police and military worshipers, and specifically with Ben Shapiro, the foreign policy, he's got such a blind spot. And so this is just a really long-winded way of saying, yes, I have listened to both of those two and a few others here and there, but mostly Crowder and Shapiro. And I don't anymore. And it's not that I'm shunning them or I think I'm better than them or anything like that. It's mostly I just got aggravated. When Ben Shapiro I remember the day I stopped listening to Ben Shapiro is the first time that Trump dropped bombs on Syria. And, he got done perfectly verbalizing some sort of libertarian non-aggression principle, pretty close to the non-aggression principle, and then said, yeah, but because it's foreign policy, it's justified. I mean, there's no logical connection. It's just a complete and total inconsistency. So I just started to get too aggravated with Shapiro and with Crowder. But I still do. I go to both of their YouTube sites from now and again. I have said many times that I think Steven Crowder's Change My Mind series is probably the best thing he's ever done. And whether you agree with him or not, what he's doing that I think is so important with those series is he's showing that long form debate and long form discussion is valuable and that people watch it. You know, this old, tired media rule that you have to do 5 to 10 minute segments interrupted by commercials, that is dying. And it needed to die ages ago. And what Crowder is doing is he's showing I can put up a 2-hour interview with one person, specifically going back and forth on some topic, whether it's public education or guns or abortion or whatever the issue is, something that's very contentious. You know, the old school media would tell you, oh, no one's going to pay attention to a long form debate. And man, those are his highest numbers. So that's what I think is valuable about Crowder. And I think there's, to some extent, the same with Shapiro.
Yeah, well, the two ones that, so I'm in a little bit of an echo chamber. I do appreciate what Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder are doing because I see, well, specifically my family on my wife's side, they watch Steven Crowder and they're Mormons. Or at least some of my brothers-in-law do. And I think they're having a positive, you know, resistance to socialism kind of thing. Although, you know, the military warship is still socialism and they still have the socialism of the right. But at the same time, you know, they're not an overtly negative influence. And what they do is decent too. But my two shows, I don't listen to Ben Shapiro. I don't listen to Steven Crowder. I've seen Steven Crowder's stuff, but I'll listen to Thaddeus Russell, and I don't really consider him to be, I don't know, a libertarian in my own brand. But there was one other show that I listened to that's not specifically libertarian, and now I can't think of it. But it was Thaddeus Russell. Let's see if it. Yeah, I can't think of the other one right now.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because with me it's kind of the same. I have watched a lot of Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder as well, and yeah, they're both pretty good on like the campus issue and so on, and also in economics because especially Ben Shapiro is a lot more libertarian on economics than a lot of other right wingers. But yeah, when you come to foreign policy, there's this immediate. I've heard them say recently that foreign policy is this very, very different scenario because it's always a zero-sum game, and it's just I'm not sure how you can come to that conclusion because like he also understands that capitalism is not a zero-sum game, and somehow countries can't trade, or I don't know, and yeah. And of course, he's also a very enthusiastic Zionist. So on Israel, he's very biased. So yeah, it's kind of similar when he has a very foreign policy focused episode. I kind of tune out, but the rest is pretty good. Yeah.
I think the biggest problem, or at least what I've identified as the reason for Shapiro and Crowder's blind spots, is that I think they're boilerplate utilitarians. I go into this on my show very frequently, the difference between a natural rights libertarian and a utilitarian libertarian. And of course, Rothbard talks about this in For a New Liberty. It's where I learned about it. And it seems to me that Crowder and Shapiro both are focused on the outcome of policy A or policy B. And they think that foreign intervention leads to a good outcome for the US. That's debatable, but that's what they believe. And so because of the good outcome, then the ends justify the means. And of course, the natural rights libertarian would be focused completely on the moral side of things. The moral consistency, is policy A or B in line with the non-aggression principle from a moral perspective, from a natural rights perspective? And they just don't have a respect for that, because I don't see anyone challenging it. So Shapiro and Crowder both rely on, well, what's the outcome? What's the efficacy? Right? These are things that utilitarians go to. And what needs to happen is someone needs to stand up and say, okay, let's say I accept the fact that the utilitarian outcome of our foreign policy is good for us. What about the morality of aggressing against this foreign sovereign people? What about the morality of taxation in and of itself? You know, that kind of thing. And nobody does it.
Well, yeah, and that's an ends justify the means argument.
Yep.
And I have seen that in our sphere too, the voluntarist sphere. And this isn't a knock on him because I really like what he does. But Vin Armani makes that argument essentially a utilitarian. I mean, David D. Friedman, utilitarian too. So in reading, you know, Vin Armani, he came out with this book, Self-Ownership. I bought it for crypto. And he says a lot of really cool things in it. And I really like him. But yeah, the only little quibble I would have is that in the beginning, he states, okay, like right off the bat, there is no economic system that does not work. He says that like economic systems always work. Even Stalinist communism worked for the Stalinists in power, you know. And then he kind of, from there, he kind of says, well, then it's about producing something that has the maximum amount of happiness for the maximum amount of people, and therefore libertarianism is the best way because it has that utilitarian outlook. But that's the wrong point. You know, we're not libertarians because we think it would produce the best outcome for the best amount of people or the most amount of people. We're libertarians because it's morally just, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Rothbard gets into it beautifully. You know, I'm going to butcher the quote, but he says something along the lines of, you know, for this reason, the natural rights libertarian will claim to be almost maniacal about their adherence to the non-aggression principle because it comes from a universal moral truth. And that's where we have to boil every conversation down is, do you believe that there are universal moral truths? And if so, what are they? Start from there and build everything up. If you try to go the other way, ends justify the means, or any other sort of political philosophy, you will always come back to an inconsistency. And I get into, there is one question that I think is very infrequently asked, because we talk about this as libertarians all the time, is that, well, our philosophy is consistent. But then the question has to be asked, why is consistency good? We're just taking an assumption that consistency is a good thing. But isn't it also possible that an inconsistent set of principles might be the best kind? And Tom Woods got into this in a very long talk that I tried to distill as best as I could. I want to say it's episode 50. So if you want to hear about why consistency is good, check out battleforliberty.com/50. And I get into it there.
I listened to this one.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think the way that you tied it in is that you were saying, well, the point of civilization is to have a set of principles and rules that can always be counted on uniformly throughout the society. So that way people know how to plan. They know how to plan for the future. They know how to plan their business. You know, they know how to plan for how they can interact with other people. And if you have consistency, you know, then at least you have, you know, a society that can be planned future. Was that the point, Mike? Yeah, basically what I get into is, and there's a lot of supporting argumentation for this, but what it boils down to, as quickly as I can explain it, is the system of political organization in and of itself should be consistent, because that will yield the least amount of inconsistencies in the outcomes. Because no libertarian worth his or her salt would make the argument that the libertarian or the voluntarist or the natural rights system of organization would yield no inconsistencies. That's not what we're saying. And many people misunderstand us and they say, oh, well, you're trying to create a utopia. That's not the case. We acknowledge wholeheartedly that every political system will have inconsistencies. But if the system itself is inconsistent to start with, then your inconsistencies will be wildly bigger and more contentious. Rather, if you start with a system that isn't in and of itself consistent in its organization, then the inconsistencies that come from it will be fewer and farther between. Not to say they won't exist. They absolutely will, because we all have different abilities. We all have different skills. We all have different motivations. Some of us are lazy. Some of us are motivated. So there's going to be inconsistencies because human beings are not robots. But if the system itself is consistent
and only the libertarian system is, small L libertarian system is consistent, then you'll have less of them. And history bears this out. I mean, look at any society that has implemented even a moderate form of a respect for natural rights. Tom Woods gets into this quite often, as do other historians, that the standard of living over the last 150 years, back when the United States was sort of a libertarian society, at least for a very short time, the standard of living just absolutely exploded for all levels of the spectrum. No, not everyone became a millionaire, but even the poorest of the poor have things like big flat screen televisions and a roof over their head and shoes on their feet and plenty of food to eat. And the list goes on and on and on, even if you're poor in the United States. And this all comes from the fact that the system itself was consistent. Now the system has become quite inconsistent, and you're starting to see a greater disparity in things like, who has the money and who doesn't.
Well, and that's Mises's fundamental insight, isn't it? That human beings are not robots. Human beings act with purpose. And to Vin Armani's credit, he captured that idea in the book. So just to quibble, that doesn't get rid of everything great that he says in the book, because there's a lot of that too. But what do you think about that, Dice?
Yeah, it's a couple of things spring to mind. It's like there's another quote. I think it's from For New Liberty as well. It's also important tactically. Like he says something like, "No one is going to hit the barricades for X% more bathtubs or something." So that's like important for if you really want to convince people, then you have to appeal to fundamental moral norms, and I don't think the sort of consequentialism is really gonna get the job done on that front. And I was also thinking about Bruno Leone. Have you heard of him, Patrick? Yeah, he's also has some. I've read a little bit about from his book Freedom and the Law. And he also says something about long-term legal certainty and short-term legal certainty. So long-term is like a sort of common law system where there's slow evolution based on societal change, but the law follows the society. And there's short-term legal certainty is like where you have legislation, but legislation constantly changes based on what the political class really wants. And I think that also connects to this conversation with natural law. You have a very robust system that you can rely on, you can build on, and with this sort of positivism you really don't.
Well, and I do have the Bruno Leone book is somewhere in that pile right here. I got it at Freedom Fest in I think 2014, back when the weekly podcast started. Yeah. So that's a good one. I've been meaning to really dig into it, but time. Yeah. Yeah. So what else?
Maybe I can do that sometime point in the future as well. Yeah.
Maybe you could go through it on your show.
Yeah.
What else is new with you, Mike?
I'm happy to report that for the first time in 7 months, I've put out back-to-back weekly podcast episodes. I've told my audience on my show several times that my family life and things have, my work life and welcoming a third child into our family has really thrown us for a loop in a good way. Understand, in a very, very good way. But going from 2 children to 3 children was very difficult, and we had to find that balance, and it took about 7 months. So my youngest is 7 months old now, and we're starting to fall into a routine again, which is great. He's starting to sleep, thank the Lord. And so I've started to put more attention into the podcast. So I did about 16 or 17 months of weekly episodes, and then a couple 3-month break, and then a 4-month break. And that was disappointing to me, but for the first time, I've put back-to-back weekly episodes out, episodes 56 and 57, and I've got lots of ideas and motivation for episode 58, which should come out this Friday.
Awesome, man. Yeah, good to have you back into the fold, because you're doing some great stuff. I mean, like I said, with with just the way that you succinctly explain everything. It's a great benefit.
Well, I truly appreciate that. That is my goal. I'm really glad to hear that's coming across loud and clear. My goal is to take complex topics and just get all of the BS out of there and just explain step by step. Here's the philosophy. Here's how it relates to today. Here's how we apply it to present day issues, and just make it as simple as possible. And I do that because I needed that when I was transitioning from a pretty staunch statist all the way to being a voluntarist on the libertarian side of things. And I'm hoping that I can reach a couple people here and there. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'll keep doing it, but maybe still not quite every week. We'll have to see.
Yeah. Well, can I ask, how's your download numbers been since you came back?
Pretty decent. I'm actually shocked. Even when I took a 3-month break, put out an episode, and then a 4-month break, I was getting residual downloads of about 100 a week. And that's with putting out absolutely no content for months at a time. And so putting out content again, I'm getting back up into the 200 and 300 a week range, which of course is puny compared to the big boys, but I don't care. I really don't care about the download numbers. As I recently said in our group chat to the Libertarian Union creators, I really don't care about the download numbers. It's nice. It's nice to be validated. It's nice to have lots of people listening. But you never know when that one episode is going to make a difference for some person and plant a seed that's going to say, you know what, I really should read this Tom Woods guy, or I should read Rothbard or Hoppe or whoever. It doesn't matter who. And then they go and they read that book, and they did that because they listened to one podcast that you put out. And it might be one person, but to me, that makes it worth it because, it would be great if I could earn a living doing this. Boy, would that be amazing. Not everyone's lucky enough to have that be the case. I do this because I enjoy it. It's a very fun thing for me. It's intellectually stimulating. It sharpens my wit, at least I hope. And so I think I've come to terms with the fact that the motivation needs to be something other than download numbers and monetary gain. And now that I've come to that acceptance, I don't really mind if I miss a week here or there. I'm not stressed about it. So that was a tangential kind of response to how are your download numbers?
No, all right. Like I was thinking, okay, to be completely honest, when I started the show and when I started the website, I wanted to be famous in the libertarian sphere. I wanted money. I was like, oh, Tom Woods has all these affiliate programs. He probably makes a shitload of money. And I was like, hey, yeah, I mean, we're gonna set up all these products, and I'm gonna have this great business model, and I'm gonna help liberty at the same time. But now my motivations have gotten a lot, actually less greedy, but still self-centered, because now the show, I think, is cathartic for me. It's therapy. It also, 10 years from now, if I'm not still doing it, I'll have all the episodes from this time, and I'll be able to look back at it's like a journal for myself. Also, like a daily kind of, or not a daily thing, but I can look back and see how I changed and how my thinking changed, and show my kids what I was like at that age or something. But what about you, Thijs? Why do you want to start a show? I'm sure it's for the money, right?
No, that's the case actually. But yeah, it would be nice to make it a little bit, but yeah, it's the most important to spread the ideas, and it's also in connection with what I mentioned to you, Patrick, is that I've joined Toastmasters as well, so I'm kind of refining my craft in combination with this, and I'm just really excited to sort of cover content that I hope to fill a certain niche that might not have been covered yet. We'll see where it goes. Yeah.
You should say something in Dutch real quick.
Okay. What do you want me to say?
I don't know. I just want to hear your voice the way it sounds when you speak your native language.
Okay, I'll think of something. Mijn naam is Thijs van der Linden. Ik woon in Nederland. Dit is hoe Nederlands klinkt. How does that sound?
Good, yeah.
I'm pretty sure what he said was taxation is theft and voting is conspiracy. Was I right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
So great.
So guys, I'm gonna sign off right now. I have some stuff to do, but yeah, it was great to talk, and I'll talk to you some other time. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good, buddy. We'll get out your stuff when you launch.
Yeah, it's good. I'll definitely keep everyone updated on when I launch. Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, so you gonna stick around, Mike, or I should probably take a break and eat lunch before we go on the Libertarian Union?
Yeah, I was actually just about to say I need to go help out. I'm in mountain time, so
there you go.
Lunchtime for the kiddos, and then we're heading to a barbecue later this afternoon. So I got to run, but I'm really glad I was able to come on and talk with you fine gentlemen now, and say hello to all the Libertarian Union gents and anyone else.
I will for sure. Thanks for joining me, Mike.
All right, take care, man.
That barbecue sounds divine.
It's going to be awesome.
Cool.
All right,
Later.
bye.
All right, everybody. Yeah, so that's been the... I think I'm going to call it right now, so I have a little bit of a break before our Libertarian Union live stream starts. Get some lunch and talk to my wife, maybe. What do you think, hon?
I don't want to talk to you.
Oh, she doesn't want to talk to me. Why is that?
I heard you talking up today.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining me, everyone. It's been a fun time. Maybe I'll do more of these live streams. I think the reason why I really wanted to do one is because I don't really have much of an idea. Or I was thinking about putting out a podcast this weekend, but this is really easy. So that's the dead hand from the grave. There you go. Yeah, that's the lady that helps make this whole thing work, right? Behind the scenes. Yeah. Never appeared on a podcast before. We were going to do an episode about how to manage your relationship when your spouse is a libertarian and you're not.
You should do one about how to live with a spouse that's smarter than you.
Oh, and then I can give a lot of testimonial because my spouse is way smarter than me, isn't she? Yeah, so no, actually I got a high five from Thice for that. No, actually, so there's a great show. Actually, I'm going to do a plug right now. Kappa Supremacy. These are, I think I'm going to appear on their live stream at the very beginning of next month. Kappa Supremacy. They've been doing really good shows. One was against they're a boyfriend girlfriend that they're ANCAPs and they do a stream, and that's really cool. So yeah, they had Eric July on. Wow, yeah, they've had a bunch of great people on. So Scott Horton and Will Porter, that was a really good episode, man. And so they're doing great work too. There's so many people that are doing great works for the libertarian movement. So we should give them all plugs. Now I have to. You should bring Reagan.
I don't know where she is.
Like, this is a chill live stream, right? So I'm just going to
I don't know where she is.
be showing some things behind the scenes that exist.
Should I put Timmy in his sweater?
Yeah, put Timmy in the sweater. This will be really fun. A treat for you guys. If anyone makes, I think this has been like a 3.5 hour live stream, right? If anyone makes it to the end, they get to see Timmy in a sweater. Oh my gosh. Last night, Timmy crapped on the door of the litter box. So I think he's getting so fat that his body won't fit into the litter box anymore. So he just comes in with his ass hanging out the back. Here he is. There he is, Tim. So we put him in this sweater and he really hates it really bad. So say hi to the internet, Timmy.
Show the back of it.
The back of the sweater?
Yeah.
Like how?
He needs like tortoiseshell glasses.
Oh, Tim. Okay. Well, I just lost my my headset. So that's Timmy though. He was the first one that we got. We got him from the animal shelter in St. Paul here. So he's my buddy. He really loves me, even though it looks like he doesn't. He just hates the sweater. But last night he crapped in the litter box and all the poop got on the door. So as he got out, it rubbed up against his belly. And then so I had to grab him and put him in the tub, and we gave him a wash down, and he's still really mad about it, isn't he? Hmm? You're a good boy, Tim. You're a good boy. Let's get the sweater off him.
Come here, Timmy. Come here, baby.
Yeah, there he is. So let's see. Now I got to get my. Oh, is he pouting now?
No.
He'll walk around and he'll be like. Okay. All right. Well, I'm getting the signal to have lunch. So thanks again for joining me on this Saturday Memorial Weekend live stream for the Liberty Weekly podcast. And maybe Reagan will make an appearance, the other cat in Libertarian Union. So thanks again. We'll catch you next time.